Anashi!
Set yourself on fire.
What is up, YouTube? This is Anashi, back with another Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile video. This time I'll be showing you the changes and updates to my Fire King deck. So as many of you know, the ban list caused Tenki to go down to 1 per deck. And despite the fact that the spell itself was a hard once per turn search spell, its loss is immediately felt. However, after playtesting the deck and making some modifications to accommodate its loss, I was able to make a playable version of the deck again by refocusing where its searches specifically come from. Instead of focusing on Tenki, it focuses on every other search aspect that the deck already had and 1 or 2 new ones. And you'll see what I mean when we take a closer look. Starting with the Fire King monsters, we have a playset of Fire King Avatar Arvada, the main focus of what little going first plays the deck has. As a hard once per turn, it can negate an activated monster effect and destroy another fire monster afterwards, but it does not destroy what it negates. Also, if it itself is destroyed and sent to grave, it resummons any fire beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monster, except for Arvada itself, with its effects negated, but that card will self-destruct at the end phase. We have a playset each of Fire King Avatar Barong and Fire King Avatar Yaksha, the deck's archetypal extenders. When a Fire King monster you control is destroyed, they both can summon themselves from hand. Being a Wen means they can only do it 1 at a time, but it's not once per turn. However, Barong can search any Fire King card from deck to hand during the standby phase after he was destroyed by a card effect. Yaksha, however, can destroy any other card in hand or on your field if he himself is destroyed, but he is hard once per turn on that effect. And we have a playset of Fire King High Avatar Garunix, the boss monster of the archetype and probably the main reason this deck still manages to get some wins. If he's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, he can summon any Fire King from deck except another High Garunix. But more importantly, during the next standby phase after he was destroyed by card effect and sent to the grave, he can resummon himself and destroy all other monsters on board. And that's not once per turn either, which means that by destroying multiple Garunixes, you get to enable what is referred to as the Garunix loop. Next is the non-Fire King monsters. We have a pair of Red Resonator, a tech I played around with some years ago and magically happened to find room for again in a new build. When normal summoned, it special summons any other 4-star or lower monster from your hand. And if he's special summoned, it targets any monster and gives you life points equal to that target's attack points. We have a pair of Coach Soldier Wolfbark, a fantastic extender I can never settle on being 2 or 3. As a hard once per turn, it can resummon any 4-star Beast Warrior from the graveyard in defense mode with its effects negated. We have a playset of Nine-Tailed Fox. It's a little bricky at times being at 3, but it's necessary to do your more link-based shenanigans. If it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, it summons a pair of 2-star zombie-type tokens to your field, and that effect is not once per turn. It can also special summon itself from hand or graveyard by treating any 2 monsters you control, and that one is hard once per turn, but if you summon it back from the graveyard with this effect, it gains piercing battle damage. And we have a playset of True King Agni Mazu the Vanisher, who is now one of my most heavily played playstarters. As a hard once per turn activating effect, he can summon himself from hand by destroying any 2 monsters I control and or in my hand, as long as at least one of them is fire attribute. Now if both of them were fires though, he also lets you banish any monster the opponent controls or in their graveyard, and since it's all part of one effect, the opponent has to stop the summon to prevent the banish. Next is the spell cards. We have one Called by the Grave. We have one Circle of the Fire Kings. It's a quick play spell that targets a fire monster you control and a fire monster in the grave. The one on the field gets destroyed and the one in the grave gets summoned. We have one Dragonic Diagram, a secondary field spell that hurts me to use because I have an eternal hatred for True Draco. It lets you destroy any card in your hand or on your field to add a True King or a True Draco monster from deck to hand, which will of course be Agni. It also gives all True King and True Draco monsters 300 attack, and if you, for whatever reason, were to tribute summon a True King or True Draco monster in this deck, that monster will also get a hard once per turn resistance to being destroyed in battle. We have a copy each of Fire Formation Tenki and Fire Formation Tensu. Just like the Fire King extenders, each one of these shares a common effect, which in this case is to give all Beast Warrior type monsters an extra 100 attack. However, Tenki can only be activated once per turn and adds any level 4 or lower Beast Warrior from deck to hand. Tensu can be activated any number of times, but its effect can only be activated once per turn, which is to give you an additional normal summon of a Beast Warrior monster. We have a playset of Fire King Island, a very dangerous resource field spell, but one that also benefits the deck in a lot of different ways. If it's removed from the field and either in the graveyard or banished, it destroys all monsters you control. But as a hard once per turn, it also either lets you special summon any Firewing beast from your hand if you don't control any monsters, or it can destroy any monster in your hand or on your field to move a Fire King monster from deck to hand. 1 Harpy's Feather Duster, 1 Monster Reborn, a playset of Onslaught of the Fire Kings, a playstarter that really shows just how going second geared the deck is. As a hard once per turn, if your opponent has monsters out and you don't, it lets you summon any Fire Beast, Beast Warrior, or Wing Beast monster from the deck with its effects negated, but it will self-destruct during the end phase. 1 Raigeki. We have a pair of Rekindling, the deck's own variant of Soul Charge it admittedly stole from Lobbles. It lets you resummon as many 200 defense fire monsters from grave as possible, but they will all get banished at the end phase. And we have 1 Terraforming. Now I do play 1 trap card and it's Metaverse. It's obviously very slow at searching any field spell from deck to hand, or activating it, but I'm not about to put set rotation or demise of the land in this just for Island to get popped. I need it safely in my hand until I'm ready to play it. Next is a side deck. I'm still playing a playset each of Cosmic Cyclone, Dark Ruler No More, Solemn Johnson, Solemn Strike, and Solemn Warning. And finally is the extra deck. We have 1 Red Wyvern, a going first play on the off chance I open Resonator. After you synchro summon it, if a monster exists on the field with higher attack than it can freely destroy the highest attack monster on the field, but only once while it's face up. We have 1 Crimson Blader, a going second tech to slow fusion and synchro plays mostly. If it destroys a monster in battle, the opponent is not allowed to summon level 5 and higher monsters on their next turn. We have 1 Lavalval X-Lord, because I think it's a funny card to screw with certain hand traps. If the opponent activates a monster effect in hand or on the field, it can destroy that monster and deal 1000 damage instead of negating it. Also, if this synchro summon card is destroyed by the opponent, it resummons any 3 non-synchro fire monsters with 200 defense from the grave in defense position with their effects negated. We have a playset of Brotherhood of the Fire Fist Tiger King, and yes, it is still a great card even with Tenki at 1. On successful Xyz summon, it sets any Fire Formation spell trap out of the deck to your field. It can also detach 1 material to negate the effects of all face-up non-Beast Warrior monsters currently on the field until the opponent's end phase. And while I can't use this effect right now, when it goes from field to grave while you have 3 or more Fire Formation spell traps out, you can send 3 of them to the graveyard to special summon 2 level 4 lower Beast Warriors with the same attack from your deck in defense mode. We have 1 number 59 Crooked Cook, a fun little attack to reset my board and frustrate certain players. If he is the only card I control, he is completely immune to all other card effects. And as a quick effect, I can detach 1 material to destroy all cards I control, and then he gains 300 attack for the turn per monster destroyed by its effect. We have a playset of Dual Little Chimera, originally a generic attribute tech, but now it's actually a main focus in my resource recovery. It gives all fire monsters 500 attack and defense, reduces all water monsters by 400, and as a hard once per turn, it moves any fire monster from grave to hand if it's destroyed and goes to the graveyard. We have 1 Firefighting Daruma Doll, a back row remover and secondary resource recovery. He gains 100 attack for every beast, beast warrior, and winged beast monster on the field. He can target and destroy a spell trap on each side of the field, and if he destroys a monster in battle, he can remove any of my beast, beast warrior, or winged beast monsters in my graveyard or that is banished to my hand. We have one YuGiOh the Fire Charmer Ablaze, an auxiliary Link 2 I use to do occasional link climbing and searching. It can resummon any fire monster in the opponent's graveyard to a zone she points to, and if she's destroyed and sent to the graveyard after being link summoned, she can search any 1500 less defense fire monster from deck to hand. We have a pair of Salaman Great YuGiOh, another back row removal card pretty much to work with YuGiOh. When link summoned, it sends any opponent's back row spell trap to the deck, and if you link summoned it by using a copy of itself as material, for whatever reason, it can also target a monster on the field and one in the graveyard, and then the monster on the field's attack becomes the attack of the one in the graveyard. And finally, we have one Amphibious Swarm Ship Ambler, a beatstick intermingled into my link combos. It gains 200 attack for every link monster in either graveyard. If it's destroyed, it can resummon any link 3 or lower monster from either grave to my field, and if it's in the graveyard and a link 3 or lower monster is destroyed, it can banish itself to destroy any card on the field without targeting. And that is the deck. Despite the hit to Tenki, the deck can still play incredibly well in a grind. Luckily for us, we still have the Garunic Sloop to fall back on, which has won me more than one Gutter Snipe game, and generic fire cards are insane resource gainers as well as reliable problem solvers. So despite the Tenki hit, the deck does still have plenty going for it. But even with this in mind, Fire Kings need support in the worst possible way. They missed their chance in the Create a Card poll, as well as Hazy Flame, but there is a glimmer of hope we can hold on to in the Structure Deck R campaign. Konami has been reformatting old Structure decks and giving them severely needed quality of life upgrades, and Fire Kings, since they were originally from a Structure deck, should be somewhere on that list. Some of the Structure Deck Rs that they've been giving have been pretty hit or miss, but with Fire Kings in mind, any help is appreciated. I thank you for watching the deck profile video. If you can think of any ways that I can improve this all-fire deck, feel free to let me know. In the meantime, this has been Nashi, signing out.